Oh, there we go. Hey.
Hi there.
That
Welcome.
popped up on us. How about that?
We're as surprised as the Penn State defense was with Illinois' offense on Saturday. Hey, it's the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. Once again, we are goonless on this Thursday. Chris Bucanani kind enough to fill in once again for
Goon's
the dear Goon.
Yep.
And Penn State, Ohio State, Saturday. Man, what a difference 7 days makes. And I mean, honestly, last Thursday, I would have told you my emotions would have been churning on Thursday afternoon here and bubbling with excitement and the whole bit. I really think this. I really think that. And now, I mean, listen, it is college sports. Truly anything is possible, but I am 99% sure that I am going to be miserable Saturday night. It's just not fun watching a game when you know your team's going to get clobbered.
Renewing
and
your
then
driver's license. I'm trying to think of other things, other experiences. I'm like, well, I got to do this. Do your taxes. This is like doing your taxes, basically.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. The wings, they have arrived.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are
always
at Quaker Steak and Lube. It is a wonderful place to watch the debacle that will be, I'm afraid, Saturday night.
Well, we got all the beers on tap right across from us, so you can definitely self-medicate. Probably should start somewhere before kickoff, I would recommend.
And listen, I guess the if you're trying to be optimistic, and God knows I'm trying.
I appreciate that about you, Ironhead, always.
Here are the three things I think you could point to as reasons for I have three different things.
Folks.
Okay, one is Penn State under James Franklin has been significantly undermanned many times, including 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, I don't think there are many, if any, that would look at the rosters in most of these years, if not all of them, and say that, yep, Penn State had equal or better talent than Ohio State. And Penn State has won a couple and has been unbelievably close in a couple of other instances. And despite what happened this past Saturday, I still think this is as talented a roster overall as Penn State has had since James Franklin has been here. So if you're looking for optimism, Penn State has played Ohio State very well under James Franklin, pretty consistently, and in situations where I think the talent differential has been greater than what it will be Saturday night overall in the roster.
Okay, that's pretty good. I'll buy that.
Number two, and I'm stretching here, and I'll admit I'm stretching.
I can't wait till we get to number three.
So here is the biggest problem I'm having and trying to create optimism is, again, at the line of scrimmage. If you are getting blown off the ball or you can't get forward progress in the running game against Illinois, with the struggles they have had this season, that's where I'm having my biggest problem trying to envision how Penn State pulls this off on Saturday night. When you are getting clobbered in the trenches
by Villanova, not just forget Illinois.
Yeah.
Like an FCS team.
This is true. And I just don't know how, but most recently against Illinois, and I just don't know in 1 week. Again, I think you can improve that. I think there are some adjustments you can make. I like, by the way, the change they made on the offensive line. I do think that is going to help down the road. But again, I'm not seeing great things there. But Illinois had been getting blown off the line of scrimmage, right? I mean, there was no reason for anybody anywhere, and I don't think anybody anywhere was thinking, you know what, this Illinois team, yeah, they've had some problems with that offensive line, but they're probably going to get it turned around and rectified at Penn State. That's probably where their season's going to get turned around. They'll be able to get they had not run against anybody, and they had not stopped the run against anybody, and they did both of those against Penn State. So, and again, did it pretty much out of nowhere. This isn't a team that the last couple of weeks you're like, ooh, boy, I don't know. This Illinois game could be dicey for Penn State, right? I mean, everybody, Goon and I know like the team can't look ahead, but of course we're looking ahead because it's Illinois. This is a W.
Yeah.
So the hope would be that somehow, again, Illinois did. They got their line play after their coach came out and said, we don't have anybody in the two deep that can play at this level. Which has to be what James Franklin and this coaching staff is at least feeling like after the loss to Illinois.
Yeah.
So maybe somehow, almost magically, it does come together. And we've talked about it, and I do think, and again, I'm stretching here. I'm trying to create reasons for optimism so that we're clear. I'm not optimistic going into this game. But, to listen to James Franklin tell it that they worked 2 weeks on the running game, maybe it's just going to take another week for everything to actually click and fall into place. They'll go back, look at the tape, and say, oh, my gosh, we needed to take one more step over here. We need to get our shoulder up there. And it's all going to come together this week, and the line play is going to be like Illinois was this past week.
Well, I can't wait to hear number
improved.
3. What's if that's number 2?
Well, here is now. This one I think is actually the most likely is if you're Ohio State and you're looking at the and listen. If I'm Ryan Day, I'm not showing my kids the Illinois game. I'm taking notes on it, and I'm knowing where we can expose Penn State's issues. But I'm not. I'm showing Ohio State and those kids, maybe the Wisconsin game, and I'm building up Wisconsin, maybe the Auburn game, and I'm building up Auburn. Yeah. But if you're Ohio State, and I get it's a night game, and listen, these guys want the opportunity, but you're playing a team that just lost Illinois. Like, you can't be dialed in the way you would have expected Ohio State, right? Like, they're bound to be taking this a little bit for granted now that they're going to get a W.
If I were Ryan Day, you know what tape I'd be showing them? I'd be showing them the highlights of the 2014 game at Penn State. And I would say this was an Ohio State team that was good enough to win a national championship.
Yeah, and a Penn State team that had no – you talk about no line.
65
they literally had
players.
no scholarship players on the line.
Terrible calls. Bad calls.
Yeah, fair enough.
And we don't have a trophy in that case because they get up to play us every single year. And to your point, this is a team that does not have 65 scholarships. It's a pretty good football team. And they just learned what happens if you overlook one conference opponent in 1 week.
Yeah.
Don't you guys make the same mistake. That would be my message to the team. These guys are going to come in here ready to play their Super Bowl, even though that's not true. The Michigan game in 3 weeks is our Super Bowl.
And listen, a couple of other things that I'll just throw out there.
Ruin Michigan season.
Yes, I'm all in on that. As far as the Ohio State game, a couple of other things to the point of the officiating. At some point, and again, I'm not blaming the officiating, although again, it was god awful, and it certainly did not help the cause for Penn State on a day in which it clearly played by far its worst game of the season.
I think it
and its worst game
under
James Franklin
on national TV.
I don't think there's any way around that. But at some point, right, you've got to get a couple of these ludicrous calls that go for you, right? Like somewhere along the line, doesn't that have to happen? And couldn't it possibly maybe happen Saturday night where Penn State doesn't?
What is the worst call that Penn State has benefited from in the last 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to go back to the 80s to meaningful calls that went Penn State's way, right? Very controversial, if not flat out wrong. Like, I mean, I'm not – Penn State has had calls certainly go its way on bad calls. It had it Saturday, actually, against Illinois. There were a couple of bad calls against Illinois. I'm talking about meaningful, impacting the game type of things. I don't know. I'd have to search. I'm sure there have been some, but
Yeah.
it feels like Penn State is owed that in a big game. And I don't mean owed by the big, I mean just football karma. I don't mean that the officials are going to sit down or the conference, because God knows I don't think that's ever going to happen. I'm just saying at some point, you've got to get a couple of those calls back the other way in meaningful spots. And listen, the other thing is, in all seriousness, and again, I have plenty of issues with everything from this past Saturday's game, but there were plays there to be made. If you hang on to interceptions, if you make catches, and that is stuff that this team has done throughout the course of this season. And listen, I'm not big on the we got to play with a chip on our shoulder, but if ever this Penn State program is going to rally around, listen, it is us against the world, right? Like the Penn State fandom has come down on this team. Like there are loyalists and they are certainly out there. But man, if you're going to the message boards, if you're talking to 90% of the people in town, I mean, it is shaking your head. It is ranging from disappointment to anger at the coaches and players. And again, I think there is a lot of talent on this team. I really do. And if Sean Clifford is close to 100%, again, it does change some of the dynamics. Again, the problem for me, and I'm just not going to be able to get around it until I see something drastic that will change my mind Saturday night, and I just don't think I'm going to, is I think Ohio State is literally going to blow Penn State off of the ball throughout the game Saturday night.
Nothing would make me happier.
You can't, there's nothing you can do to remedy that. That's not something that, well, if we call this play, if you're getting blown up at the line of scrimmage, you can call whatever play you want. It doesn't matter. You lose.
Yep. Yeah, nothing would make me happier than this team rallying and taking all our hot takes from the last week and sticking them straight up our ass. That would make me pleased as a pig in slop. Nevertheless, here's another hot take you can add to the collection. I think the ceiling for this team is 9-3. I don't even think about the possibility of Penn State being able to run the table. And
I'm with you at this point.
To your point about James Franklin has been frequently outmanned going up against Ohio State. There really is something to be said for both momentum and luck in the long game of college football.
Yep.
Where if you look at the challenge of catching up to Ohio State, they got a big lead on Penn State in the talent acquisition category, which is really the lifeblood of college football. And so it goes back to those stats I was giving you and Goon on the show on Tuesday, back to since Penn State has been competing in the Big Ten as a football participant since 93, no conference opponent has gotten to double-digit wins against Ohio State. And, what is it, 27, 28 years. And so, the best anyone has been able to do is Michigan and Penn State. Both have managed to beat them 8 times over that stretch. And so when you've got that much dominance working in your favor, when you're going into living rooms and high schools and selling that, it's really, really difficult to catch up. And once you get into that upper tier, the biggest advantage, and we talk about this, Brendan Noble, all the time, the biggest advantage you have if you are in the elite tier in college football, which I think is only 5 programs. I think it's Clemson, and maybe their status there is a little tenuous. We'll see. But right now, I still get Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Oklahoma. And what those schools have and everyone else does not is a huge leg up in getting the probably no more than 2 to 5 impact offensive and defensive linemen in every recruiting class. Like there's fewer than double digits of game-changing, especially interior defensive linemen. And Garrett Haskell's one of them that you see right now in Columbus. Those guys are so rare. And once you have gotten into the little elite circle that lets you go to a recruit and say, son, 25 coaches are going to come in here and sell you as the missing piece to get their program to the playoffs. So you can buy that or you can't. But I can tell you right now, you come play with us, we're already there.
Going.
That's the line of scrimmage. It's like you said, you lose at the line of scrimmage. It is really, really tough to upset a team like Ohio State. Purdue did it in 2018 with like maximal optimum conditions, right? They were being overlooked. They had a great game plan. They had athletes and scheme that could match up against Ohio State, and they had the emotional inspiration of the young man whose name is escaping me, but if you watch the game, you know who I'm talking about. And it was a night game on their home field, and we don't have those intangibles working in our favor, other than I do think skill position, athleticism, I think we match up on both sides of the ball.
And I will say, truthfully, I'm not so sure that it's that this isn't a good year given the circumstances for Penn State to be on the road against Ohio State. I mean, I get that a night game at Beaver Stadium brings a lot of value, but I feel like this fan base right now, if Ohio State jumped up 14-0, I'm not sure that fan base hangs in there the way it has
for the exits
in some other ones. Whereas, again, to me, this is a week, if you're James Franklin, I mean, it really is all about, listen, it is us against the world. If you get your hands on the ball, offensively or defensively, you've got to come down, right? Like, you just have to make the plays, but they have guys that are capable of it. I mean, they haven't done it consistently enough on the interceptions. Again, I haven't counted. I think it was Black Shoe Diaries or Onwards Day. One of them said there's been, it seems about right to me, but they said there have been 7 dropped interceptions throughout the course of the season, and obviously none bigger than the one that by Brisker that would have clinched the win over Illinois on Saturday. But and listen, Brisker's made a lot of interceptions. So again, there is. Do I think there is a path there? Yes. I just think it's a very unlikely path. And part of that path is something that I just don't have any faith in after the Illinois game, which is at the line of scrimmage. Again, Penn State's not going to dominate that, but I'm not sure Penn State can even hold it close enough to make it reasonable for their playmakers to go make plays. That's my biggest concern, and in particular on the defensive side, the interior of that defensive line just again got absolutely crushed by Illinois. And I get Illinois was doing some things. I was half joking earlier when I was talking about Illinois' offense, but they gave looks that Penn State hadn't seen before, right? Like, they changed things up. So we've got to get more guys in here and try to get the running game going. And then once listen, I can buy that for the first half. But again, you're Penn State. You have all of these top-notch assistant coaches. At halftime, you've got to be able to make adjustments that result in improved play, and that didn't happen on either side of the ball, really, on Saturday. If anything, I think the defense faltered a little bit more in the second half. And again, I get that at the end of the day, this has been a bend but don't break defense, and the 10 points. There are some legitimate points to be made in favor of this defense, but I'm sorry, you gave up over 300 yards, 100 scheme or whatever against Illinois, and this is an Ohio State team that has phenomenal linemen and
hell of a back.
And listen, they have the other problem is Ohio State could let's use Illinois' formation, and they can do play action off of that, and they can beat you so many different ways. If you're not exposed with having that weakness, I don't know. I am generally Mr. Optimistic, and I just don't see. I don't see how realistically Penn State wins this Saturday night, and I'm not even sure going in. And again, I'm with you. I would love to be proven wrong. Nothing would make me happier than to come back out here on Tuesday and say, man, I am eating my words. I couldn't believe Penn State controlled the line of scrimmage like that. I would absolutely love it. But going in, I think Penn State's going to have a very, very challenging time keeping this within 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think so too.
Part of it too, again, my optimistic take is that Ohio State's going to overlook Penn State. Now, the reality is Ohio State is on a mission now to score as many eye test points, if you will, as it can ahead of the first BCS rankings, and trying to earn itself a playoff spot after that loss to Oregon. And so if Ohio State has the chance, and I'm afraid they will,
they're going to lay the lumber.
They are absolutely going to keep the gas pedal down. And again, partly, I think because there's animosity against James Franklin and the perception of him and what he does at Penn State. And I'm not even saying it's a wrong perception. I'm just saying I think other coaches across the league, if they have the opportunity to hammer Penn State, they will take it. But I think more so, in Ohio State's case, it is, listen, we need to show the voters that we are the team that needs to be one of the four, and that if we go on and win the Big Ten championship, that Oregon game was just a fluky thing. And boy, since then, look at how we've absolutely crushed the competition in the Big Ten.
Yeah, look, it's about style points. It's about recruiting battles.
Yeah, well,
look, there's not a single coach in the conference who respects James Franklin. Now, look, that's no reflection on him because all those guys are scumbags and or idiots. So, I mean, I don't know how much to take from their opinion, but clearly I said this when I talked about Kirk Ferentz coming out and doing what was so uncharacteristic for him, which was throwing this program right under the bus. And though nobody really called it for what it was, he basically specifically accused individual amateur athletes of pretending to be hurt.
Yep.
And the only reason he got away with it because he knows his buddies in the old school coaching fraternity think James is full of it. And they look at him the same way they do PJ Fleck. They think those guys are interlopers and used car salesmen and full of crap. And so they'll take every opportunity to take a shot at them. And look, I think Ryan Day, probably as one of the younger head coaches in the Big Ten, maybe doesn't feel as strongly as some of the crusty old guys do about James. But I think he also knows that if there's a threat to his program, it's Penn State more than it is Michigan.
Yeah.
And so they're going to look to really just beat us down, not just because they need it this year, but for the bigger picture. Although, again, to your point, if you are in the playoff mix this year, you are thinking about seeding probably more than you normally do because of the possibility that you might be able to face Cincinnati in the first round. And that's no knock on the Bearcats program. But look, if I give you a choice and say, hey, you're going to play a game against Cincinnati or like Georgia or Alabama, who are you going to pick? Right. So, yeah, for sure. The one thing I do find interesting about this year's Ohio State team is they are coasting a lot on benefit of the doubt. And not with good reason. What kind of talent they have on their roster because you see top 5 recruiting class every year. Ryan Day has 3 losses as an Ohio State coach, none of them to a Big Ten opponent. But they don't have a ranked win this year. They did lose a game on their home field, as I said on Tuesday, to an Oregon team that was playing at 9 a.m. Pacific Coast time without their 2 best players.
Exactly.
And other than that, they've taken care of business in really impressive fashion. They have not scored fewer than 40 points in any of their 6 wins. But it's been against the likes of Maryland, Rutgers, Tulsa in the non-conference schedule. Indiana playing their 3rd string quarterback for most of the game. You really have not seen them against what would even approximate an equal opponent other than the Oregon game, and they lost that game in their building. So again, I'm not trying to fade Ohio State. I think this was probably a team that had to replace a lot off last year, just like Alabama had to. And now you're starting to see coaching along with talent acquisition come to the fore as the season goes on. But it is going to be interesting to see, do they look like this juggernaut they've looked like against the dregs of their schedule when they've got to play one of the better defenses in the country?
Yeah, and the one of the biggest head scratchers, and maybe the biggest for me, aside from why the coaches let Sean Clifford play the entire game on Saturday against Illinois, was the linebacker play. And I know, I mean, I'm talking about the line getting blown up, and I do think the line got blown up. But listen, to some extent, it was a numbers game, and Illinois stacked the numbers in their favor. Again, Penn State just didn't adjust, but truthfully, if you pin me down and you put the Wonder Woman lasso on me, the line play is defensively is less concerning to me than the linebacker play in that game. And maybe I just haven't been paying close enough attention, or I got caught up in just the record. But I thought overall, the linebacker play has been pretty solid this season.
I agree.
And Brooks has been phenomenal.
Yeah, Ellis Brooks has really played well.
But overall, I think it's been solid at worst until the Illinois game. And it wasn't just it was they were running themselves out of position, and it wasn't just one or two. It was like every linebacker that was in there seemed to, let's try to overcompensate here. Let's run out over here, or they were not able to fight off blocks. I mean, it was just like so I don't know if that's just a one-game aberration, or if, as other teams now look at the film again of that Illinois game, it's like, oh my gosh, all we got to do is get ahead on these linebackers, or run a little bit one way or the other and then cut back. And man, they're just they don't know how to adjust.
Linebacker is a weird position in college football now. I think especially in this conference, because you really can't recruit to put guys out on the field who can stay on the field against spread offenses like Ohio State has, and Michigan is running now under Josh Gaddis. Like some of the teams that you feel like you're chasing to win the division. Yeah. But then at the same time, you got to play Wisconsin and Michigan State, and Illinois comes out with that high school offense that they ran and beat us with, although they scored 10 points in regulation. But and it's worth probably looking back and remembering that the linebacker depth chart has been shuffled a little bit because we recruited Jesse Luketa as a linebacker, and he just clearly has a skill set that makes him more of a defensive end in modern college football. Lance Dixon was a high 4-star recruit who's now in West Virginia because of the transfer portal. Clearly the coaching staff doesn't have a ton of confidence in Charlie Katcher, although he did play some on Saturday, or Tyler Elsdon. I didn't really see him much at all.
No.
And you also have John Sutherland, who, again, is a safety, but almost is built more like a star-type hybrid safety linebacker, who was out because he got hurt during the Iowa game. So you're stockpile of experienced guys who you can shuffle in there has definitely changed as the season has gone on. Although, again, not knowing anything about how easy it is to do this on the fly, I was a little surprised with what Illinois was doing offensively. Why you wouldn't just, especially with a safety like Brisker, why you wouldn't try to run a fourth linebacker out there and just say, look, we're basically going to just bootstrap a 4-4 bear front here. And just let Brisker play single high and, take, I think, the very reasonable risk that Art Sikowski is not going to be able to shred us in the passing game.
Yeah, that's it's.
Are any of this even one of those close games to being over this game? Right?
No,
it's a week, and we're still coming up with new things to complain about. Unbelievable.
And I still maintain, and listen, I would love, obviously, to see Penn State beat Ohio State Saturday night.
Imagine also being an Eagles fan right now.
But, and I'm with you, yes. But I do think that the ceiling, I'm with you that it's 9-3, but let's just, and I know we talked about this a little bit Tuesday, but let's just
get nuts,
play the hypothetical, go crazy. Penn State beats Ohio State and runs the table. I'm telling you, I think this season still ends up being more disappointing than any with James Franklin, because, again, then you're just pointing back to, my God, they did everything except for they dropped the ball against an Illinois team at homecoming. I don't know. That loss to me just would get magnified. And I get, the other side of it is if you lose to Ohio State, now it's 3 straight losses. And again, I still think coming out of that, Penn State will be in good shape and wins out. But then you don't point back and say, well, yeah, if it wasn't, because then you got to point to all 3 games, and you needed 2 of them probably to still get in the college football playoffs. Yeah. And I think even though Iowa and Illinois will both still eat at you, it's like, well, yeah, but
At that point, you
I don't
become
know.
the biggest
It's-
Michigan Wolverines fans on the
Yeah.
planet the last week of the season and hope they can once again play us into the Big Ten championship game. But
I am really curious to see that game.
I don't
too.
think, by the way, we're going to have the other.
I don't think so either.
You're talking about Michigan State?
Yeah.
Oh, man, me too.
I am so curious
too.
to see because I really don't know about either team, and I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's going to be a very competitive game and a fun game to watch. I'm not sure, even coming out of it, that if we're going to be able to accurately sit there and say, "Oh my gosh, yep, those are two top 10 teams," or that they're, I don't know. I'm just so with college football in general. Again, I was watching.
I'm gonna look up the line on that one.
One of the talking heads the other day on TV was talking about how Georgia and Alabama are clearly the top two teams, and then there's a drop off, and then you throw in a bunch of teams, including Oklahoma, Cincinnati, Ohio State, and there's a lot of debate about how you would place those top four teams. But again, Alabama is good. I'm not disputing that, and probably is a playoff worthy team. But that is a more beatable Alabama team than we've seen in recent years under Nick Saban. I just and even Georgia again, rightfully is number one, and I think if you're asking me right now, I think rightfully the favorite to win the national title.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's like Georgia up here. Like for a few years there, I mean, it did feel like it was Alabama and Clemson, maybe Ohio State, maybe Oklahoma, kind of on the verge there, but it felt like it was those two, then a gulf to two or three other teams, and then another big gulf until everybody else. Yep. And this year, it feels like Georgia's a little bit ahead of everybody right now. And then to me, it feels like there is a bunch of other teams right in the hunt right now. And again, could several of those teams get exposed the way Arkansas did? Arkansas was what were they up to? They were like a top 5 10. Or top 6 team, something. Yeah.
I think
one
they peaked
point
at 7. I want to say.
And then and again, for Michigan or Michigan State, right? A 3-loss season, even if they are really good, a 3-loss season is still possible for both of those teams
100%
right now. And that's not with them being a pretender. Yep. They could still be a really good team. And because of the schedules that they still have to face, including each other on Saturday, come away with 3 losses.
So put you on the spot. Mike the mailman loves the home dogs, loves the home puppies. Sparty, 4.5-point dog on their home field.
At some point, Jim Harbaugh has to win one of these games against a top 10 opponent.
I like Michigan
right?
to cover. I think Michigan wins by, I'm going to say, 9.
Yeah, that going in, that feels about right to me. I just think that I think that program is a little further along right now than Michigan State. And listen, I'm not going to be shocked if Michigan State wins. I mean, it's not going to be a flabbergasting moment. But yeah, going in, it just feels like Michigan is a little more experienced. And listen, I think both teams are really hungry. I mean, this is a true rivalry game in the Big Ten. But I mean, Michigan is hearing all of the talk about you don't beat top 10 teams. This isn't what you do. I mean, and they've been good enough to do it in the past. It just, at some point, a couple of breaks got to fall your way, right? In one of these games. And I just, at the end of the day, I do think Michigan's a better team right now across the board. I think it's a little better defense.
Yeah.
I think I think the special teams, I would give Michigan a very slight edge. We'll see. I'm really curious to see how that game plays out.
Yeah, so I'm going to give the Michigan defense the benefit of the doubt and say that they can contain Sparty's run game. And if they can do that, if they can make that offense one-dimensional, I think they can score enough points to win. But if Michigan State wins, I think it is absolutely the matchup of the Spartan defense versus Michigan's offense. And again, we're going to find out so much about both teams. So let me put this to you, Ed, because part of the reason Jim Harbaugh finds himself in the situation that he does vis-a-vis the boosters and fans out there is that despite being the alum and the hometown guy who, comes home and puts the Bo Schembechler hat on and is supposed to restore the luster of Michigan football, which, again, if you scrutinize actually not even that hard the quote-unquote legacy of Michigan football, it's maybe not quite what you've been led to believe it is. But anyway, is because he has not beaten the program's two chief rivals, and he's just kind of held serve against Penn State and lost some big games to us recently. He is at Michigan this year because he did something that, as far as I'm aware, is totally unprecedented in the world of big-time college coaching, and probably just a unique outcome of the coronavirus era. He took a massive pay cut to stay in that job, and that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Look, James Franklin went 4-5 last year. He's about to go 7-5, and he is an agent, and his agent are putting us over a barrel to give him more money and another contract extension. So, it doesn't happen that you win 8 or 9 games a year on a consistent basis, and then you take a pay cut. But here he is. He's in this kind of tenuous position, and it feels like a crossroads. And so far, he's done everything you would have expected for him to re-solidify his position there. But left on the schedule are Penn State, Michigan State, and Ohio State. Does he have to go a minimum 2-1 in those games to feel secure in his job situation? Like, if he's 1-2 even, like, let's say he loses to Sparty and Ohio State but wins at Penn State, is that enough?
It's a great question, and I don't know the answer.
I'm just saying, the pressure has got to be on. He's got to be thinking, man, if I lose this game, I've got to run the table against Penn State and Ohio State, or I might be in some real trouble here.
Which, again, tells you, and listen, they're well paid and all of that, but it does tell you, again, why the coaching profession is so challenging. Because, again, if you're an SEC coach, right, no matter how good you are, unless you are dethroning Alabama and Nick Saban, right, fans are like, well, I mean, you're doing okay. Or
in the last 12 years, 3 SEC programs have won national championships, and the one that isn't Alabama, or the 2 that aren't Alabama, fired their head coach within 24 months for the crime of not being Alabama after their first championship.
Yeah, and listen, and I think, that
Take
is
note, by the way, James.
Well, and listen, so the other side of that is, and we'll see what happens with LSU after Orgeron, but Auburn, I think, is a good team this year, but it's not challenging for the national title.
Nope.
And I don't think, and we'll see again, things change very quickly in college football. I don't think Auburn is going to be winning a national title in the next couple of years at the very least. And listen, they may not have with Gus Malzahn. I'm not sitting here. I'm not getting into that argument. What I'm telling you is, you look around. Yes, everybody in the SEC is chasing Nick Saban and Alabama, and you're getting the breakthrough year here or there. But it's really difficult, and that's in a league that everybody in the national media agrees is by far the toughest conference in college football.
Yep.
But so you look at that and the pressure cooker that is. We talked about Ohio State, and they've separated obviously from the field in the Big Ten to the point where you have a lot of Penn State fans clamoring for the only program that has been truly on the heels of the Buckeyes over the last 6 years here in the conference, clamoring for a change to be made.
To be fair, at least this is not my sense. I don't think there are a lot of fans.
I don't think either in the overall.
And look, every fan base in existence has fans who want to fire the coach.
No question.
There are a few of them, but even Alabama has people who are dissatisfied with Nick Saban because he dared lose a game this year.
No question.
Right, but they're an exception. But I don't think there are a lot of Penn State fans who want to get rid of James. I do think the number who are their exhaustion with the leveraging the USC job every single year has increased.
Yeah.
Again, like we don't have time to get into the whole complicated question of what it takes to win in college football and to what degree does he really have a wandering eye versus is he just using his leverage. To me, the situation of Jim Harbaugh demonstrates why I actually have, even though, trust me, I'm sick of it too, and I've been sick of it. I also have a pretty high degree of sympathy for the guy going about it the way he does, because there is no loyalty in the profession. Now, again, I think he is also a lunatic if he doesn't think he has held literally the only 2 Power 5 coaching jobs in existence where he would get the amount of leeway in those jobs as he has gotten. Like, there is no other school with a legitimate chance to win a national championship. Zero. There's like 25 programs that can contend for a national championship. Yep. There are 24 where you would have been run out of town by now if you would have lost some of the games that James Franklin has lost. And not only are we not going to run them out at Penn State because we don't fire coaches, and I personally like that.
I'm with you.
If he's still coaching us at the road opener, the season opener on the road at Purdue in 2022, he'll be doing so with more money in his pocket, more money for his assistants, a commitment to build even more lavish facilities than we've already done in a year when we ran on a $70 million budget deficit. And somehow he'll still have, making $7 million a year, local beat writers who make $30,000 coming out and blaming the fans for not being thankful enough and carrying his water for free. And James will still go home and think about how put upon he is and what a rough ride he has and is so deeply unappreciated at Penn State. So my point is, we're all nuts. We are all lunatics for participating in this insanity. And I'm going to spend my night on Saturday night when I could be doing anything other than what I will be doing and enjoying any of it more, watching us get our brains bashed in by the Buckeyes. Sorry.
Well,
Maroon.
Look real quickly, and then we're going to take a break. So everybody in the SEC is chasing Alabama, and nobody's successfully getting there. Everybody's chasing Clemson in the ACC, and I get, yes, this year. But I mean,
everybody's chasing Pitt this year.
Yes, but
what a great conference.
Yes, but overall, right? I mean, there's been a wide separation there between Clemson and the rest of the conference. A good separation between Alabama and the rest of the SEC. Oklahoma has clearly been the class of the Big 12. And what am I missing here? The
Pac-12 barely counts.
The Pac-12 is the one, and Ohio State in the Big Ten. So you have, Oklahoma, Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State have been, again, the 4 leaders in the conference, and then Georgia has been playing better in its role to Alabama than Penn State has to Ohio State, and is rightfully and legitimately, that 5th team over the last decade or thereabouts in college football. And the Pac-12 is the only conference that doesn't have that one marquee team that everybody else is chasing. And what is the conference that everybody rips every year? And part of it is because they don't have, it's, Washington for a couple of years looked like it might be. USC has looked like it might be for a couple of years. Arizona's had a moment. Stanford had a nice couple of year run. But, there's nobody that over a 10-year period, you're like, man, that's the standard bearer.
Yeah.
And so, the nice thing, if you're in the Pac-12, and it's why I do think that USC job would look appealing for James Franklin or anybody, is, again, that is the conference where you can go in and you're not necessarily chasing down anybody. You have a chance to quickly be the everywhere else. And again, I'm not saying that if you take the Georgia job or the Florida job that you're not going to be able, Texas A&M job, that you can't overcome but there is clearly, and you've got work to do to try to overcome it. And if you don't, again, the fan bases at the Penn States and the Texas A&Ms and the Michigans are, well, why aren't you beating? Well, because nobody is. It's the answer. And again, it is difficult to dethrone those programs because they're established for a reason. And again, once you get it rolling the way Alabama and Ohio State have it rolling. Again, it doesn't take a lot to derail it, but it is easy to keep it rolling if, again, you keep everybody.
Yeah.
Now, what I am really, one of the many things I'm curious to see is what happens over the next 5 years here with the transfer portal now and with the name, image, and likeness. And I don't know. Again, I'm just curious to see how quickly or if it does change. Maybe it makes Oklahoma and Alabama and Ohio State more entrenched as the teams, because it becomes, harder and harder to compete with the guys that are getting the 5-star guys who are staying and are happy in those places. Whereas, again, if you're chasing, maybe it's, if I'm not the starting quarterback and I'm not even at the top program, why am I staying here? I don't know. I'm really just curious to see how this all kind of plays out over the next 5 years. And for as difficult as college coaching has been, again, I think it is about to get even more difficult and more challenging. And again, I'm not asking anybody to throw pity parties for these guys. They're getting paid very handsomely to handle all of these responsibilities and duties. But I'm telling you, it is a lot of responsibility and duties. Just hanging on, Joe Paterno used to joke about it. My livelihood depends on the decision making of 18 to 22-year-olds. Tell me how many of you want your livelihood depending on that. But now it's not just depending on the decisions of those guys in terms of, hey, let's make good decisions in terms of what we do off the field. Now it's decisions on where they're going to go, whether they're going to stay, whether they're making enough money here, whether they're drawn by the money that they're going to get for just signing in a school, and they'll slack off a little bit. I mean, it just keeps increasing the number of at least potential headaches, if not real headaches, that these coaches are having to deal with. And again, they get paid very handsomely. I get it. If you run a program for 5 years and get run out of town at a Power 5 conference, you're still, you've got at least $5 million in the bank to soften that blow. I get it. It's not a bad gig in that regard. But man, I'm telling you. It is a time-consuming, it is an all-encompassing job, and it is a job that just keeps getting increasingly difficult and increasingly pressure-filled. And again, it is very difficult to try to dethrone the Alabamas and the Clemsons and the Ohio States of the world. It's, and to expect somebody to just be able to come in and do that, which is what I think many of these schools think should happen. It's tough. It's tough on everybody. Take a break here. We will be back to wrap up shop. We'll talk some NFL and Major League Baseball action when we return. This is the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show from Quaker Steak and Lube, and we'll be back right after this.
Lion Country Kia is offering exceptional deals on your new Kia during Kia's Command the Season event.
We have a nice selection on the 2021 Kia Sportage with various options and prices as low as $26,800, saving you $3,000. Or if you demand big power and towing capacity, slip into one of the 2021 Kia Sorrentos available on our lot, starting at $32,680.
Discover why Kia drivers throughout the area come to Lion Country Kia or visit online at lioncountrykia.com.
Quaker Steak and Lube is throwing open the garage doors and setting up the umbrellas. It's patio season. Come enjoy great food, drinks, and fun in the sun. There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube, but we're really amping up our event calendars for our favorite time of year. Visit thelube.com to find out what's happening at your local lube this season. Lunch, happy hour, dinner, or late night, indoors or outside, at Quaker Steak and Lube, you'll always find big flavors, friendly faces, and lots of fun.
Hi, Johnny Broom here. If you're in the market for a new Hyundai or a pre-owned car, truck, van, or SUV, nobody beats a Blaze Alexander deal. But don't take my word for it.
Hey, Goon says tell him Johnny sent you.
Hey, tell him Johnny sent ya.
Tell him Johnny sent you.
Wait, tell him Juan or tell him Johnny sent you?
Tell him Johnny sent you.
Here at Bill Pickle's Tap Room, we say,
tell him Johnny sent you.
And remember,
And we welcome you back to the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. Again, Goonless, he's on the IR today. Chris Buchanani, kind enough to fill in. And on a day in which we are both dreading the college football weekend, which is not a position I thought we'd be in going into the Ohio State game a week ago. But such is the case.
This sucks.
NFL action.
Speaking of things that suck for some of us,
I am going to be very curious to see the Steelers.
Top 3 pick, Ironhead. That's what I'm thinking about.
The Steelers-Browns game and the
it's a good one.
Yeah.
How long has it been? Like what? Since like I don't know. I can't think of a time, truly, Ironhead, that maybe the Steelers are down this year. We'll see. But like, it very rarely are both those teams really good at the same time, right? I mean, the Browns haven't been really good in like 25 years, but like the 60s, the Steelers stunk.
Yeah.
The 70s, the Browns stunk.
Yeah.
The 80s, the Steelers kind of stunk again. And then like the 90s, the Browns were kind of crappy and then they went away.
Yeah.
And since then, they've just been garbage.
And again, as I've said many times, it's in the NFL especially trying to and actually in college football, come to think of it, trying to pencil in, well, we know this is a win or a loss. After last weekend, apparently that is not something you can do. But this game against the Browns, to me, just feels much more important than the 7th game of the year normally should, even against a rival or a divisional foe, whatever Steelers fans want to look at it as. Because again, you're at 500, you build a little momentum going into the bye week. If the Steelers can take care of business on Sunday afternoon and beat the Browns, regardless of who's at quarterback, you look at the upcoming schedule for Pittsburgh, and that's what I was just pulling up, and it is very conceivable. And again, I'm not taking anything for granted. I'm well aware, believe me, as a Steelers fan, been many years where we've penciled in W's only to be let down. But certainly very winnable games the following 3 weeks for sure. And again, if you get to that point, and a lot of ifs, which is always a reason to be nervous if you're a fan. Potential is a very dangerous thing. But you get to 7-3, now you're in the thick of the race. You have some confidence. Again, we'll see how the what the injury situation is, how the Ravens are playing, how the Bengals, by the way, hello Cincinnati. That Steelers loss to the Bengals doesn't look as bad after the Bengals absolutely crushed the Ravens. And I will say, I'm not ready to put him in the Hall of Fame yet, but Joe Burrows and what he is bringing to that Cincinnati locker room and what he's doing on the field, but more so, maybe not more so, as much so, I think the confidence that he just exudes and brings to the table. And listen, this is a guy, I do think there is something to be said for people that have to go through some adversity. You got to have a skill set, obviously. But if you're able to go through adversity, I do think it really does help you on the other side in terms of both humility for yourself and appreciation for the opportunity you have. And I just don't think there's any doubt you're seeing that with Burrows this year. And I think it's, I've talked with David Taylor about this a few times. I mean, David, I'm not going to say everything came easily, but I've talked to him about it, because he worked his tail off from the time he was a young kid. But, and what I've talked to him about is it is easier to work your ass off every day if you're getting results, right? Like if you're on a diet and you're losing 10 pounds a week and your goal is 50 pounds, you can stay on that for 5 weeks and, oh my gosh, I got the results. if you do a diet and you're trying to lose 50 pounds and you lose 5 the first week and then you lose 3 and then you lose 1, it's like, well, crap, man. Like, I don't understand. I'm doing everything I can. It's harder than to stick with it, right? If you're not having success. It is, again, still difficult to diet, still hard to do, but man, if you're getting the results, yeah, I'm going to stick with this. I can see it. It's clearly working for me. And I do think for a lot of these the elite athletes, you know, if again, you work your tail off. I'm not saying they're not putting the time in and working hard, and there is some adversity in and of that. But again, you get the result. Well, for David, I mean, that was the case. Like, he worked his tail off, won state championships, worked his tail off, won national titles and Hodge trophies. And yeah, had some setbacks there and along the way too, but few and far between. But then, you know, he had the injury, couldn't get over the hump on the national stage. And, you know, it was kind of decision time. Am I really committed to this? Which he obviously was. And then again, you're able to kind of readjust your perspective. And I just think Burrows is in a really, unfortunately for me as a Steelers fan, I think he is in a really good place.
Yeah.
And I think that Cincinnati roster is really good. I've been saying going into the season, I think the AFC North is as talented and as good a division as there is in football.
Yeah, no question.
And I still think, you know,
No doubt.
after the Steelers went to 1-3, I was questioning whether the Steelers were one of those teams. But again, I think they have an opportunity now to get to 7-3. And if they do that, then again, I think this division becomes really it's going to be fun to watch down the stretch, because I do think you have 3 and maybe 4 teams there that are all, again, capable of playing with anybody in the league on a given day. I don't think any of them are consistent enough now that I would put them in as the Super Bowl favorite. But as we've talked about it, so much of that is getting hot at the right time. I mean,
Yep.
I still think Buffalo is the most complete and best overall team, at least in the AFC and probably in football. But that's certainly not a guarantee that they're going to go to the Super Bowl or win it.
Especially not
sure.
if you're the Bills.
Well, yeah, exactly.
No,
and again, there's just so many things that play into it with, you know, injuries, momentum, and again, just things coming together. Sometimes you get a break or two, you know, even more so in Major League Baseball, where, you know, this World Series, if there's anybody that thinks they definitively know how this thing is going to play out, and even if you guess and you end up right, it was a guess and you got lucky and you got right. Because you cannot tell me anybody knows how this thing's going to finish up right now. I think it's fun if you're a baseball fan. I think these first 2 games have been really intriguing and have given you a lot of reasons to tune in for the remainder of the World Series.
Unless you're a Phillies fan, in which case you do not care.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's
like those Yankees-Mets World Series for me. I'm like, what are you doing to me?
Yeah.
You know, might as well have a Ravens-Cowboys Super Bowl, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm. No, Ed, obviously I am more concerned with who the Dolphins and Colts are playing every week. I'm watching the Detroit Lions and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Tell you what, I think Detroit's going to get a big W this week.
I think they're the better team.
Well, I think
Philly's playing
the
right
one
now.
thing with the Lions, in all seriousness, they are playing with passion right now. Like, that is a team
They've
that
been
is
in every game. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I do think that they are. I think they would actually buy into the Eagles coaches speak today on the Flower, and I'm not sure I followed. I've heard two clips of it.
Can I give you a sports conspiracy theory?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that if you go back and you look at the hiring process for the Eagles, they went through a bunch of interviews. They were turned down by a bunch of big name candidates. Eric Bieniemy did not want to interview. Brian Dable from Buffalo didn't want to interview. It was not viewed as an attractive job. So they had to start with the second tier and work their way down. I think at one point or another, it became clear to them that this roster was being built to set up a high draft pick this was a lost season, year one of a 2-year rebuilding program. Nick Sirianni came in and they were like, this is a guy who is not going to screw up our effort to tank this season. And he is going to get eaten alive by the local press. So he is going to be the perfect type of bring him in. Don't screw up the tanking plan. We can comfortably fire him after 1 year.
Trust the process, kids. Trust the process.
And then we'll have a much more attractive cap room. We'll have 3 first-round picks probably. We'll be able to get a serious coach come in here. You really just did get the sense like he was maybe set up to fail. That's my sports conspiracy theory for you. But anyway, real quick, back to the Steelers.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the schedules at all, other than I know that the NFL has tended to try to backload team schedules with divisional games for precisely the reason that if you get a competitive division, those games become super compelling from week to week. So I am guessing, right, that all of these AFC North teams have a good number of divisional matchups in the second half of their schedules. And like you said, if it plays out kind of the way we're expecting, that they will win the games they're quote unquote expected or supposed to win, that's going to make a really exciting second half of the season with Browns, Steelers, Browns, Ravens, Bengals playing those teams. I can't believe I'm saying this, but that's the most stacked division in football. Those are going to be must-see TV.
Yeah, and I'm trying to pull up the sky. I know that the Bears and the Lions are two. I don't know if they're the next two. I think they are after Cleveland.
Scary. But talk about Joe Burrow and the Bears.
Yeah.
If Justin Fields continues to stink for Chicago, and he told, look, this is way too early, but if he flames out, so most people remember guys for what they did in the NFL if they're high-profile players.
Yeah.
So if Burrows continues to play well and Fields continues to play poorly, the legend of Ohio State ran Joe Burrow out of town so they could get Justin Fields. Never won a title. Peaked at getting blown out by Alabama in the championship game, and Joe Burrow went to LSU and won like a championship with maybe one of the greatest offenses in college football history. Like that is going to become one of the great legends of football. If it goes that way.
It absolutely is, and
would not break my heart.
I'm with you. And listen, there's so many things that play into that too, right? Like it's. If
it's totally unfair narrative. But that'll be the narrative,
and I'll enjoy it. Let the record clearly show. But again, there are so many things that play into decisions and opportunities that are real, that are made and then realized. And I don't know. Yeah, finally have the schedule here. I've been trying to bring it up. So they have. The Bears, the Lions, and then they're at the Chargers. So that's not quite the easy route that I thought it was, relatively speaking, to 7-3. But you get to 6-3 anyway, potentially. Again, if you can beat Cleveland, Chicago, and Detroit, and both the Bears and the Lions games are at Heinz Field. So
you better go 2-0.
Yeah, you have that. But then, yes, you get into after the Chargers. And listen, that's it's at the Chargers, and but it's a primetime game, which say what you want about Tomlin. I still think, much like Penn State fans that want Franklin out, I'm always amazed by the number of friends that are tired of Tomlin. I'm like, do you understand how hard it is to win consistently in the NFL?
Yeah.
And he's won super, like, what hasn't he done? Anyways, but they play very well in primetime is where I was going with that. And, and the Chargers in primetime, I'll still like the Steelers' chances. But then, you'll have the game at Cincinnati. You're back home with Baltimore, at Minnesota. Then, how's this to finish up the season? Home with Tennessee, which outside of Buffalo might be the best team in my mind in the AFC, and maybe is the best team, period. Then at Kansas City, home with Cleveland, at Baltimore. That's your stretch run of the Steelers. So you need to make hay over these next 3 weeks.
Yeah, you really got to win that Chargers
if
game,
you're the Steelers.
Yeah.
And probably due to get the momentum going for one thing and give a little bit of breathing room in terms of trying to make the playoffs at the end of the year. But it's going to be fun to see how it all plays out. And at least the Steelers at this point, those of us as Steelers fans can at least envision the scenario somewhat realistically that the Steelers will be in the playoffs. I'm not sure that's the case at the other end of the state.
2 top 5 picks, baby.
Let the showdown in Columbus begin. Good times. We'll talk about the big upset on Tuesday.
I love it.
Until then, be good and be safe.
Go State.